Welcome to Bottom Line Sports Talk. I'm George Abraham. You know my partner Albert Cameron. Very special guest today, Rick King, Commissioner of the All-American Conference. Rick, welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Rick, thank you very much for coming. Fall sports coming up big. I looked at the list: cross-country, football, girls tennis, girls soccer, volleyball. As commissioner, tell us a little bit about how you handle all those and what has to be in your job description for that.
Well, you know what? It's a pretty demanding job at times, but we have a pretty good system in place. We have monthly meetings with our athletic directors. We have bi-monthly meetings with our athletic directors and principals. We have a very firm constitution and bylaws as to how we do things. We get a lot of input and a lot of help from the ADs helping with the master schedules. We have several assigners that are in charge of helping with the officials and making sure, you know, from the volleyball to the football to whatever needs done is done. And we're very fortunate right now that we have some quality people in place. I can't say enough how much time and effort our ADs put into making sure that we have our schedules in place. You know, this is our 8th year in existence. We have a nice system worked out. We're at the point with our tiers. You know, we know going into the year what we want to do, and from a scheduling standpoint, we actually do most of our schedules like 2 years in advance.
Wow.
So, you know, like an example, like skipping the winter sports, you know, like if we have the boys or girls basketball, you know, basically our basketball schedule the following year will just be flipped and, you know, the home and away. So even though it's a lot of work, there is a system in place that kind of helps us there to get things done.
Explain to the fans and explain to us the tier system. That is something I quite don't know how to grasp. You explain, and also really hit on I wrote down nows in Poland. Is that still in effect?
That's still in effect.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still doing that. You know, when if we went back about 3 to 4 years ago, you know, we had started with 16 teams in the conference. We had lost a couple, added one, so we were down to 15 teams. We knew we needed to give the conference a boost. We needed to bring in something to, you know, make things work. It wasn't working as we had liked with the 15 teams. By bringing in the bigger schools, and by bigger schools, you know, we let in the Fitch, the Boardman, the East, and the Harding, and that kind of created that upper tier. And then we felt, with the exception of football, the red, the white, and the blue tier worked really well. Obviously, the red is kind of the big boys, the larger schools in the area.
How many teams in that one?
When we go to most sports, it's 7. You know,
7,
we try to go 7, 7, and 7 right across the board.
Okay.
Was the criteria success or enrollment?
Enrollment was number one.
Okay.
Enrollment was number one. And right now, going along, that's a great question, because Ohio High School redoes the enrollment figures every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So in April, May next year, we'll come out with the enrollment figures, and then we'll have a meeting, and we'll see if any adjustments have to be made.
It could happen, though. You may have to make adjustments.
We could have to make an adjustment, yes.
Wow.
And something like that will go to the superintendents, because what we have is a board of directors, which is our executive board, which is the superintendents. And then we have another committee that, you know, is the principals and the ADs who can make some changes and do some things. And then, you know, my job as commissioner is to try to steer things and oversee it and hopefully guide us in a good direction.
Do you have to troubleshoot? Are you an arbiter in any way? How does that work?
Yeah, we end up, you know, with 21 schools and almost 20 sports, we end up in some dilemmas. And, you know, sometimes it can be something that happened on the field. Sometimes it can be something that happened off the field, and then I may have to meet with the superintendents or meet with the building principals first.
Let's say, for example, we got cross country. We just go right through as the year goes, football, etc. Do you try to be at one of those? If you look and you say, this week, the big one is Boardman.
You know, I do 2 things. I sit down at the beginning of the year and make a list of our master schedule. Try to make sure I see as many of the 21 teams as possible.
Okay.
Last year I probably saw, I think, 16 ball games during the course of the year. That first 2 weekends, well, the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, when somebody's playing, I'll make sure I see those games. And what I try to do is hit everybody the first 7, 8 weeks, so that weeks 9 and 10 I can go to the championship games.
That's good thinking.
It's nice if you get a call or something.
I want to be there at a championship game. I want to, you know, feel that excitement.
Makes sense.
You know,
You said you use the ADs a lot, and in today's world, athletic directors have lost some of their punch with making decisions. Are they still making a lot of decisions in the schools that you deal with?
They make a lot. You know, from my standpoint, I'm very pleased with what our ADs do and what they contribute. You know, and like I said, you know, you're taking a look at, we have almost 10 sports in the fall. Without their contributions and helping us with like the boys golf schedule, girls golf schedule, some of those others, I wouldn't be able to do all of it myself. So, we have, basically what we have is like I use the word liaison. We have one AD for each sport. And, during our meetings, they'll come up and give a report. Boys and girls cross country, I will go to our league meet, which, you get 21 high schools, 21 middle schools, boys and girls teams. You can end up with maybe 400 runners at that event.
Yes.
Interesting.
And that's just an unbelievable experience for everybody involved.
You just hit one really big, a home run for me. You deal with the middle schools also?
Yeah, we have full middle school schedules.
Gosh,
Yeah.
So you're commissioned not only the high schools, all the way through.
Yeah,
wow.
and I think it's a benefit for the schools and the communities and everybody involved.
Your background in coaching doesn't hurt either.
No, I
You've
coach.
experienced, a guy goes, "Hey, Rick," and you say, "Hey, well, wait. First of all, I was there. That's the best thing.
I was
you
there,
could do.
yeah.
My AD used to have to go everywhere because he didn't know what I was going to do, and he figured he better see it just in case. What did he? So no, I saw what happened. But on a serious note like that, I hear you, and I keep thinking you get spread pretty thin.
You know what? It's
All.
I do. I keep very busy. On the other hand, it's kind of it's one of the things I've done my entire lifetime. Starting from I've been involved in sports from little league baseball on up, and I ran track in college. I came out, started coaching my first year as a teacher, and then I worked my way to an AD's job, and I've been doing it for a long time.
Said, that is your passion.
Right.
That's what you do. Do you have anybody else in your system beside the ADs, like right underneath you?
I have Joe Moglich is our secretary treasurer.
All right. Okay. Now, what does Joe do? What's his?
Joe will handle all of our paperwork. He will do all of our the treasurer's job, the billing, making sure.
Okay.
Like I just mentioned for the cross country, I mean, you have that many schools and you have the awards and everything involved, and our cross country meet is just an absolutely incredible day. Also, we have a boys and a girls golf tournament during the course of the year.
Okay.
With the size of our league, we've been very fortunate. The boys for a couple of years were over at Trumbull Country Club, and just a great venue and a great experience for them. Now the boys this year are going to be over at Squaw Creek, and they'll get a chance to golf at that country club. The girls have been at Tamara Wynn, which is a very nice public course, great public course. It's also one that's used for the district and competition.
Oh, is it?
So the kids,
they get a chance to get
they
on
get
ahead
a
of
chance.
time.
They get a chance to be on it and get an extra 18 holes.
Interesting.
So-
You said something. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
You said about the ADs, and what went through my mind was Little McDonald and Big Boardman. In other words, I'm assuming that the AD at McDonald has a science class.
Yes.
Where the guy at the Boardman is just the AD.
Is that true?
Is that
That's
true?
true. That's true, and probably the person at Boardman has an assistant or maybe two assistants. And,
sure.
From a budget standpoint, there's going to be a big difference, and I think maybe the person at Boardman may be doing a little bit more from a fundraising and advertising.
There you go.
Yes.
And you just have a lot more things
On the table.
on the table. Yes. And right now, everything we do is pretty much computerized, and even with our officials right now, we have an arbiter program where a signer sends out to the 5 football officials an invitation to be the to officiate, game 1, game 2, whatever the case may be. They hit OK, it automatically goes to both schools, a copy sent to the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
And that's something.
And it's something, and it's done.
The change.
Remember they used to call, do you have an opening date on Wednesday? Now they all get on the computer.
It's on the computer.
And God bless it. I mean, it has been a big help
It's
for
awesome.
these guys.
I mean, and that is the part. We are not tremendous with computers.
No.
And
No.
now, we're better than we ever been. We can do things, but I'm saying that's where it's great.
Well,
That's where I still believe in people skills. I still believe in communication with our mouths. But that's where computers.
Oh,
really come in.
it's great because right now probably everybody in our league can go to the arbiter system. Football is done, volleyball is done, boys, girls basketball is done, and baseball, softball will be done here shortly. So we're almost at the point we haven't even started the school year, but the officials are done and we know who's going to be there.
Well, we talked a lot, Rick, about you looking down on your league. Is there anybody in the Ohio State that calls you for information, or is it from above you?
Oh, I've been fortunate. I've talked to the commissioner a couple
what
of
I mean.
times about
Yes.
different things. Yes, and I think one thing that I'm very proud of is just the respect. Northeast Ohio, the Youngstown Warren area, and we've expanded Ashtabula. The tradition and the respect we've had through the years and continues on.
Calls it the king. Albert calls it King football.
And
Everything's
you know
second.
what? It's like right now everybody. I went to get coffee this morning. Saw a guy. Hey, we're starting today, and I said, I know we're starting. and everybody realizes, and we hope that, we're going to have a couple of schools. I think over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been averaging anywhere from 5 to 7 schools make the playoffs.
Nice.
So
you have success too.
We've had success. We've had some
Yes.
great success, and we have the people who's been there. They're on a regular basis, and that's very exciting. It's also very exciting when somebody like Boardman is making a comeback, and haven't been in for a while, and all of a sudden they're qualifying. So this year it'd be nice if we can get somebody else that surprises us.
Yeah, and we talked to the commissioner of the PAC, which is in Pennsylvania, is a conference of Division III schools. He does the same job as you at a different level. And he talks about how he wants to see every place, but how he wants to see success.
Yes.
With it. Talk about that a little bit. How you root so hard for your teams.
Well, we root hard for everybody, and I said, I have a background. I was fortunate to coach at a couple of different places. I graduated from Newton Falls. I spent 36 years at Highland, but right now it's kind of, I got 21 adopted kids here.
That's what it's saying.
I spent, I love watching Poland play, Canfield play. We've had a lot of success at, Lakeview, Liberty in the past, LeBray, all those schools, and I'm waiting for somebody else to bump through this year and they qualify because, first of all, it's great for the football team. It's great for the athletic department. It's great for the community. There is just that. There's nothing like it. And speaking of success, I also get excited. I had 3 stepchildren and my own son. They both, all 4 of them played varsity soccer for 4 years and 2 played in college. So the quality of our boys and girls soccer in this area, every year we end up with somebody that qualifies for the region.
Yeah, we don't look past that. We know how soccer is really taking off in Eastern Ohio. There's no question about it. And golf. Golf was taken. I mean, every year I think, gee, somebody from this area is.
Well, we had the young lady from LeBray a couple of years ago playing in college right now. She was a state champ 2 years ago.
You never know where it's coming from.
Poland had good girls.
Yes.
Poland has had tremendous.
Great golf team.
And I think if you go through that list, let's be honest, people look at football as kind of driving the sports around here, but I don't want to lose sight. Our boys and girls soccer teams, our volleyball programs, our cross country, we end up with somebody at the state level in almost every sport. Wrestling, take a look at the number of quality wrestlers we have and how many people qualify.
Rick, that's why we're here. We have you here today. That's the number one reason to learn about, but to try and work with you to get the girl golfer who's doing great. Get her name out.
Tell the AD, give us a little. We've been here 9 years.
We love to have.
We understand they're busy. We get all that.
Right.
But we're on in parts of Poland, parts of
almost lots of places.
See, we need almost the feedback from them. So that we say, hey, we'd love to cover you.
Well, I'll tell you right now, we have an outstanding website. We have Tony Spano who's been working on it, and he updates it daily. And like right now, we had a couple of young men who decided to further their football careers, like Victor Williams from Holland. He's going to Toledo. The very next day, Tony had that on the website.
Yes,
and so we have a lot of information available, and we'll be sure to share that with you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If Tony, you can talk to Tony and say, Tony. Take an extra 5 minutes and send it to Greg at Armstrong so we can get that every time on the air. We'll lead off. We'll lead off every
There for a while, we were like the Canfield news station. And everybody's saying, gee, another guy. I said, Greg Cooper was the one guy that sent us stuff every week.
The one thing I would like to say is, we look at our kids, and they're kids, they're under 18, they're great athletes, but they're great people. And every year when I go to the Curbstone coaches and we have our honorees for football and basketball and they get their certificates and they have a player of the year, when they go through their accomplishments and what they've done outside of school or outside of the field, it's just unbelievable.
We used to do a show.
You're looking at 3 people like that.
Canfield. We go over and do a show there. Here comes this first. She's going to Toledo. Here comes another guy. He's going to Harvard. Success, and in the classroom.
And you know what? The year from the thrower from Canfield went to Harvard. We had a football player. We had a football player from Holland, Dan Moody, who went to Harvard.
See, that's what I'm
and you see these kids, and you're looking at them. They're good football players. They're good track athletes. But then all of a sudden you realize they're going to Harvard, and that's. And in Holland, same time we had Taylor Williams, who played girls basketball at Princeton.
So you got enough right there.
They're good. They're just outstanding young people.
And that's the purpose of our show. We always talk right to the fans, and we'll talk to you again. We talk a lot of athletics. This is 3 athletic guys, but whatever the girl, young man or young lady does well in the classroom, we really build that out up big because that's where the success is going to come. And you know that with your ADs, with your coaches. They need to stress winning games, but not taking anything out of the educational aspect.
Right. And it's just, and like I said, our athletes right now, we're kind of in a new era where they're contributing to the communities. They're doing a lot of volunteer work.
Right.
A lot of colleges want to see that on applications.
Sure.
So a lot of our athletes and a lot of the school clubs are getting involved in that. And every time I turn around, somebody from one of the schools is doing something different. It makes a positive impact in the community.
And we talk about it too. You have to realize, like, I don't care if it's a golf, cross country, or volleyball, how important it is to the individuals competing. A lot of times from the top, you have 15 things to go to this week. But what you have to remember, that one match to them, that's their Super Bowl.
That's their Super Bowl.
And you got to treat. We do boxing over in Pennsylvania. These little guys, minute rounds or whatever. But to them, that's a throw or manila.
Yeah, it is.
It's a big deal, and it is important. So
let's explain to our fans the playoff system in football plays, and if any other sports that you want to share, also how they work, like who gets in and how it works. I think our fans will love to hear that.
Well, in football, Ohio is now with the 7 tiers and 7 divisions, and the top one is like that Super Division I. I think it's the top either 70 or 72 schools, and they are, from a number standpoint, they're absolutely huge. It's almost 600 boys or more in their top 3 groups. Mentor, and all those schools in Columbus, where they have about 24 high schools in one conference, and they're all Division I. And then you go to, even over to the Canton area, where you have the Glen Oaks and the North Canton Hoover and the Massillon Perry, the Federal League.
The big schools, yes.
And, and some of those schools will have their 800 to 900 boys. I mean, they're huge, huge. And then, then everything else, after you get done with the top tier, what they basically do is they'll take the remaining schools, divide by 6, and they even it out. So, you may have 120, 120. They'll try to keep it equal number.
Okay.
And so, that's why from year to year people can change.
Has your conference jumped 1, 2, 2?
Well, what's happened is, like a Canfield and a Niles and a Poland, some of those schools that were originally 2s became 3 when they added the 1. And then, you end up with a lot of schools that are kind of, I call them bubble schools, like a Poland, a Hubbard, a Struthers, who one year they may be a 3, maybe they're a 4, depending on their, that every 2 years, 10 to 15 kids. If you're at the bottom end, you can be the top end the following year.
So the ADs are following that closely.
You follow it very closely.
The coaches are really tough.
The coaches are following, and actually most schools have somebody in the superintendent's office that does the number count. Because everything's electronic numbers now to the state.
So football, we got 7. Is all the other sports are the same way?
No, the other sports are, almost everything else is everybody qualifies. And, you go to basketball and baseball and some of those.
So they're all open. They're
all open, yes.
Okay.
And, basketball has the 4 divisions. Baseball and softball may have 3. Cross country, I think, just has the 2.
Well, there's the answer right there. So we go from 7 in football.
Yes.
Down to 4 in
basketball. They just went to 7 last year.
Okay. So
right?
Yeah.
And we went to 6 in PA yet, but I don't think we helped ourselves because the big schools weren't dominating.
The big schools still dominate, though, in Ohio, don't they?
Well, the big schools. The big schools dominate. And you haven't mentioned the magic word, the parochial schools, the private schools.
We mention around here all the time.
And the one thing, if I take a look over the last 4 to 5 years, and it doesn't matter if it's a Boardman, a Fitch, a Howland, a Canfield, a Poland, a Lakeview, a Hubbard.
Down the line, yes.
We've been beaten by St. V's and Hobans and St. Ignatius.
You know that.
No.
We know.
So, we do the best we can. I think we're great. And, sometimes people say, hey, we may have had the best public school team in the state of Ohio.
Yes.
But when we run into those Catholic schools and private schools, it's tough.
There's no rules on it. See, that's what there's no. They're not doing anything wrong.
No.
That's I can't look at St. Ignatius and say they're doing. They're just doing what
they're doing what they're allowed to do.
So they'll take that guy over there and then drive another 80 miles and take the guy over there. There's no rules restriction.
Those parents are paying $12,000 to $14,000 a year to send them to St. Ignatius.
Yes.
Not a whole lot you can do.
We got a Central Catholic in Pennsylvania. Is going to send 3 to Notre Dame this year. Well, he and I, we've been places we've not sent 3 to Notre Dame since we started.
Right.
Yeah, 40 years ago.
Who sent 3 to Notre Dame?
Yeah, 1 year. So they might have a chance to win it all. Let's shift gears. How are your crowds? Are the crowds still holding up? And I see we're not seeing big crowds a lot of places.
No.
Are the rivalries in place still for big games? What's that like?
The crowds. That's a very good question. Very good point. I think they have diminished. It's not like it was 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
It's certainly not like it was 30, 40 years ago. You're going to see crowds at certain games. You're going to see crowds at the beginning of the year. You're going to see crowds in good weather.
Okay.
I think part of the dilemma is, and we had talked previously about like our middle school, some of these middle school kids, parents have more than one child. They may be involved in middle school athletics. They may be involved in dance. They may be playing indoor soccer. And, the parents are spending time with them and taking them to events. So instead of a family going to a Friday night football game, they're going
like it used to be.
Like it used to be. They're going many different directions. And there's just so many other options for people today. When I was an AD, people used to say, well, we only have so many people, so many kids at a football game. They're talking about our student body.
Right.
And I'm saying, well, if we had 1,000 students in our high school, between the band and the football team, we probably have 300 involved. Mm-hmm. Out of the remaining 600 to 700, we probably have another 300 that are working that night because they're working basically full-time jobs. And so that really only leaves us about 300 or 400 kids that could be at the game.
Right. Great way to display
Choices
it.
today.
There's choices.
It's so different. The guy said the other day about the numbers on these playoffs. I said, well, yeah, I had 5 channels. I had no choice but to watch.
Yeah.
Now I got channel 9. That's what Aurelio, he says
Sure.
when he beats these other guys. He said,
Yeah.
I'm on channel 68, for God's sake. No one knows where we are. It's a different world.
It's a different world, and then in the same thing, you have so many. You have ESPN and all those other channels. We've switched times of volleyball games, boys and girls soccer. It used to be Saturday night. Now we moved it to the afternoon. Let's be the same problem like a YSU have. Are you going to compete?
YSU is the major
Are you
problem.
going to compete with a Notre Dame or an Ohio State game that's on at 7, 8 o'clock? You're going to lose them.
Oh yeah, we've talked.
So we got to make sure to
Mr. Stroll on our show, and it's hard to believe, but they do. They'll look at Ohio State's
Sure.
schedule
See when they kick
and
off.
making sure they're not trying to play
And in
against
our
Ohio State.
area, I mean, you have YSU, you have Kent State, and you have Akron.
Yes.
And they start at all kind of strange times.
Oh yeah,
You
many
know,
times 6
Kent-
o'clock at night. I know.
6 o'clock.
I've seen many times.
I think
those
Kent State
games.
2 years ago they had a 10 a.m. football game because Ohio State was playing at noon.
Yes.
They wanted to get.
So they do it.
Yeah.
Now gates. So the gates taken in by the individual schools. You don't. There's no shared gates. Are
No,
there?
no. It all goes to the individual schools.
Okay.
And you know what? And unfortunately, your success kind of dictates what you're going. And that proverbial. Sometimes the rich get richer, and the people that are struggling, they really struggle. And
Yes.
when you need to add things to your program, that lack of gate can really hurt you. Same thing with some of our schools, some of our larger schools, and some of our mid-sized schools. They do a great job with advertising and people in the community that make donations and that in kind, and they help out. And then we have some schools who, economically in their communities, they're not as fortunate and they struggle a little bit. I mean, it's nice when somebody will come in and say, hey, you need new football uniforms or whatever, just send the bill to me.
It's pretty amazing.
Here's
How-
10,000 bottles of water.
Yeah.
Give them out at the football.
Sure.
This Butler, Newcastle, there's an
That's
attorney will come in and say, it's his name. They're
Right.
selling it for $1 a bottle. They got it for nothing.
Yeah, and there's so many different things. Like I think we talked before the show about the concussion testing. I mean,
Big.
That's big, and that's a fee for the schools.
Yes.
Because everybody's doing it online or doing the
Yes.
computer
I just
testing.
did it.
So somebody has to pay for the program. Somebody has to pay for all the retests and the tests, and somebody's got to look at those results. And it's absolutely outstanding. I'm impressed with how it works. I'm very impressed with how it works.
No question.
Because we found that there's kids that years gone by, a doctor or nurse would say, hey, you're okay. No, they're not. And, when I was an AD, we had several of those late onset concussions where a young man or a young lady, they looked okay the night of the event, whether it was soccer or football, and then all of a sudden next day in school, I don't feel so good. And you go back to the hospital and guess what? All of a sudden you have a concussion.
Well, today that's not going to happen. Today, I guarantee you,
And then
every school has been.
they're all there.
They're
and-
all on board on that one. They might not be on board everything
That guy
else.
staggered out to that huddle at Michigan, and that AD wasn't there long.
I know.
Remember when that happened?
Yes.
Hey, few minutes left.
Okay.
We talk coming in and this and that. The amount of kids participating, it's starting to be a concern. Teams not having 10th grade, combining the 8th and 9th. Is this hitting your league hard also, or we just noticing that more on the other side?
I think
of
you're
it?
starting to notice it everywhere. I think in the last couple of years, a lot of schools have said their numbers have been down. We've had, over the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of schools consolidate 7th and 8th grade who previously did not. In the past 2 years or so, we've had several schools who have consolidated their freshmen with maybe their JV, just because you need a good amount of numbers. You can't have a 9th grade football team with 17, 18 kids. You can't even practice. You need the 22, and then all of a sudden you get less than 20. Now you have concerns for the kids. somebody gets hurt, et cetera. So variety of reasons, kind of goes back to what I said a few minutes ago. I think there's a lot of choices for people in society today. The concussion is kind of hanging over everybody's head. That's for some kids, maybe they like the sport, don't necessarily love the sport, and they're not going to be part of it. And, I think the parents have a little bit of influence on it.
Well, the good news and the bad news. The good news is it's not your conference. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
But the bad news is it's happening.
It's happening.
And so I'll tell you, so don't think it's just right here in East
No, it's not right
It's
here.
happening
It's
nationwide.
You were telling me Hopewell or somewhere.
And it's
Blackhawk got rid of their ninth grade team, and they won state championships.
And it's not just in
Is that-
football; it's
no
in
question.
multiple sports. Boys and
Oh,
girls.
yes.
Boys and girls basketball. For years ago, they'd have tryouts and cuts. It's not like that in most schools anymore. You get 12 kids come out, they probably make your varsity.
They're cheering.
They're cheering. That's your varsity basketball team.
Coach, to finish it up, what is your goal? What would you like to see your conference go to? What in your mind, in your strength, this thing is really getting stronger. It's really getting better. What do you see?
Well, you know what? I think we've made a lot of progress. We've made a lot of strides. I think we just want to keep strengthening things for the people in Mahoning Valley and the outlying areas. I think we're a big part of this community, and we want to continue to be a big part of this community, and we want to provide that great, the great sports for the people. And we just want to, give our kids that opportunity to compete at the local level, and then simultaneously, our goal, we're going to have a couple of teams in almost every sport with that state championship or that regional championship is their goal.
You mentioned kids, you mentioned community, and you mentioned team, and that's the way it works. If you mention team first, we'd be in trouble. But you mentioned in the right order. The kids come first. Let's get the community behind them, and then the teams will fall in place.
Yes.
And your conference will be a special place if that happens.
Thank you. And we're very proud of where we are right now, and we're very pleased with the superintendents that put things in place, and our coaches, and the programs they attend, and the training classes, and we talked about the concussions, and almost everybody, if not everybody, has a trainer and the programs in place.
That's really important.
We only have a minute and a
That's
half.
really important.
Good. I'm going to get a minute and a half. Trainers at events. Do I bring mine, or do you make sure that the home team has somebody there?
Usually the home team will have somebody. Some schools may have a contract in place with their provider that they'll take somebody on the road. We're also very fortunate that so many teams today, somebody on the team, their dad's or mom's a doctor or a nurse, and we have somebody there. And with the telephones and the 911, if there's a major injury, 90 seconds, and we get somebody there, there is no hesitation.
It has to be.
It has to be.
Yeah, there's no question. I think that's a big. I heard you say the word usually. We got to throw that one out. We got to just say has
Somebody.
to be. Because all it takes is that one time.
Yeah, we're not second guessing
that's
ourselves.
right.
We're going to protect our
That's right.
athletes.
That's good.
We're going to do our we just try to do the right thing.
Thanks, Rick.
Coach, we want to thank you. Rick King, Commissioner of the All-American Conference. Real great day on here. I know we learned a lot. We're going to be following you as we go. And he coached with Bill Bourne. Coach Bill Bourne's still going strong. So in another 20 years when we have him back, Bill will still be at Southington.
I like that.
Thanks again for watching Bottom Line Sports Talk.